and many awareness campaigns, many conferences, and many initiatives led by Dr. Fida, being the head of the support groups. And these awareness campaigns and most of these initiatives are focused on the mothers of people of determination and the people of determination themselves. And this is to empower both the mother and the child, and to raise more awareness in the society, especially in UAE. And Dr. Fida herself, she's a mother of a rare disease child with rare disease, Angelman syndrome. Her daughter is almost 16 years old, and she has Down syndrome. She also is an undiagnosed. She's undiagnosed.
Angelman.
Yeah, she is Angelman, but she has. Dr. Fida just mentioned that she is having also autistic traits, characteristics. She's not diagnosed for autism yet, but however, Dr. Fida noticed that she has also many traits and characteristics of autism. So there might be overlapping conditions between the Angelman and the autism.
Karen, can you
so we're going to start today,
yes,
and yes, okay, we're going to start today. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Karen Kade. I'm a neurodiversity advocate and writer. I'm also a mother of a neurodivergent child. She is autistic. She is 9 years old now. She was diagnosed at the age of 4. And I'm also the founder of People of Determination store that empower also neurodivergents and highlight their talents. And recently I've joined also Neurodiversity in Business as a volunteer, which is a charity organization in UK, and which focuses as well on the neurodiversity in business. Of course, the awareness of, first, and then the neurodiversity in business. Today our topic is about neurodiversity, because I think this is, a topic that we need to shine light more on the neurodiversity. Neurodiversity have gained momentum recently, not only in UAE, particularly in all parts of the world. However, it's somehow still a very new term in UAE, and many people still don't recognize it, or don't, or maybe they are somehow confused of what does it really mean. And there's a lot of misconceptions around it. So today we are here to clear those misconceptions and to spread more awareness, and to try to educate and more about this important topic, and why do we need it? Why do we need neurodiversity in our lives? Why do we need it in the education? Why do we need it in business? Why do we need more neurodiversity awareness in our society? And there will be another topic also led by my colleague Shija. She will be talking about the twice exceptionality, and we will start now with the neurodiversity. I can share now the presentation, Dr. Fida.
Yes, you can. You can. You are co-host.
All right. Okay. I hope everyone can see it. Can you see it, Dr. Fida?
Yes, but can you open the presentation?
Yes, it's open.
No.
You cannot see it.
No, you can open, and after you can share.
I did. أنا في
لا مش اللي هي باينة بس كأنه عرض كده ايكون.
لا أنا فاتحتها. طيب let me try again.
When you make share, you will see him in down.
طيب هلا بينت؟
No.
بس أنا عملت لها شير.
لا أنت عاملة شير للمكان.
I think you have to change the window you're sharing, Karen.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah,
Change
I know. On my laptop, it's shared. It's already shared.
Okay.
Let me stop and do it again.
Okay.
لا
On my laptop, I can see the whole presentation shared. So
okay,
this
no.
is
Maybe no. Yeah, that's
Yeah. And
Yeah.
now you can go to presentation view.
okay.
Bravo.
You can see it now. Okay. So I think now it's okay, right? It's visible.
Yes, it is. Beautiful tree.
The tree of neurodiversity. Okay, so when we talk about neurodiversity, I think many of you already know from the participants, and many they're not familiar with the term. It's the idea that there are definitely cognitive variations in neurology, and these variations should be respected. And the term is not new. I think many people, there's a misconception that neurodiversity term or neurodiversity as a movement is something new. But this is not true because, you know, the whole concept and the whole ideology was there since 1990. But it has just gained momentum only recently for the past few years. But the term was coined since 1990 by the autistic and Australian sociologist Judy Singer. So it has been there from 1990, and it was coined by an autistic Australian sociologist, Judy Singer. And she, by that time, Judy Singer, she was in the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. She was an activist and an advocate. She realized that the autistics in particular are minorities. And mostly all the back then there was no term as neurodivergent, but all those people who are neurologically different or they have brain differences are minorities. They are neurominorities. So she wanted, or she created this whole movement so that she can try to include these neurominorities in the society. So she recognized that different kinds of minds were oppressed, just like other like feminism or other types of intersectionalities. So they needed a movement as well of their own. People with neurological differences needed a movement of their own so that they can be included in the society. And this movement should be a social or human rights movement. So this is what it is basically, the neurodiversity. It's a human rights movement which argues the importance of including all neurotypes. Neurotypes, that means different brain wirings. And in the tree here, we can see that neurodiversity, it means all types of brains, all human brains. And it's not restricted only to the neurodivergence or to the ADHD brains or autistic brains or people with sensory processing disorder, people who have dyslexia or. So when we talk about neurodiversity, we are encompassing everybody, all human brains, even the neurotypical brains. And the neurodiversity is there, as you can see from the tree down, because there is the ableism, which is another form of oppression. It's discrimination against people who are different, neurologically different. And there's the environment as a barrier, there's the social barriers, and there's also the medical model, which is there, and there's the advocacy. And as you can see from all the branches is coming all the neurotypes. These are all neurotypes and different brains with different wiring, and which includes also the neurotypicality. So when we talk about neurodiversity, we are talking about minds of all kinds. So neurodiversity, it encompasses both the neurodivergence and the neurotypicals. And the whole word stands for the neurological diversity. But you know, the word neurological diversity was a bit like a It's too long. It's as a term, it's 2 words, so they wanted to just make it shorter. So this is why they chose neurodiversity rather than neurological diversity. But the word means neurological diversity. So it's a social term, political term, human rights movement, and it gives us a new paradigm for social change. And it has both, as you can see here in the umbrella, it acknowledges that every brain is different, and it has neurodivergence and neurotypicals. So when we talk about neurotypicals, who are neurotypicals? Neurotypicals are neurotypical brains or people with typical brains who are not classified as neurodivergent, or they have any brain, any divergence from the neuronormative standards. And neurodivergents are people who have different brain wiring. Like under the neurodivergence, you can see there are many conditions. Autism, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, personality disorders, anxiety, tics, dyscalculia, hyperlexia, giftedness, OCD. It's endless, you know. Everyone who has a neurological difference will be a neurodivergent, falls under the neurodivergence. And every brain who is a standard or who's classified as not a neurodivergent brain, it falls under the neurotypicality. And they are both neurodivergent under the neurodiversity umbrella. And this is one of the misconceptions, especially here in UAE, that when we say neurodiversity, many people assume that neurodiversity is representing only neurodivergence. They miss the part that neurodiversity, it is minds of all kinds, that also encompasses neurotypicality. That means neurotypical brains. So the term, it's actually for everybody. It represents everyone. It's neurodivergent brains and neurotypical brains. And honestly, lately there were a lot of misconceptions about what it is neurodiversity, because, you know, it's gaining momentum only recently, and there are many questions raised, and there are many medical terms taking over. There are many even professionals, doctors, they are somehow confused with there's a linguistic confusion, I can say, the linguistic confusion around the word. But however, Judy Singer, being a sociologist, she's a linguistic nerd, you know, like this is her work, this is her job. It's all about the linguistics. So she wanted to make it clear that neurodiversity should not be used in a different meaning, or used in the wrong meaning. So this is why she has made it clear in her definitions. What is neurodiversity and what it is not. So in her definition, from the creator of the whole ideology, we can tell that what it is neurodiversity and what it is not. It's definitely not a scientific term. So neurodiversity is clearly not a scientific term or a medical term that can be used by doctors or by psychologists as a diagnosis, or by psychiatrists as an assessment or a diagnosis. They cannot assess, we cannot say there's a neurodiversity assessment, or this, we're gonna do like a neurodiversity or a neurodivergence test. So obviously this is not a scientific term, not a medical condition, and it is not a term to pathologize the brain variations. It's not a diagnosis, and it's not a descriptor of genomes. This is as well, it's really important, because it's never meant to be a descriptive of genomes. Like I have recently watched a video, which is really impactful, honestly, and it was like somehow portraying a lot of information which are actually a reality, and they are true. However, there was a misconception in the video that neurodiversity, it's linked to genetics and to the genes. So the concept is there, or the movement of neurodiversity is there, not to represent, or it is not meant to be as a descriptor of genomes. It's just a pure social justice and human rights movement to include minorities in the society. Who are those minorities? people who are neurologically different. They have different wiring in their brains. And these should not be considered as ill or diseased people. Their brain difference or their brain neurology should be respected. And you know, the term neurodiversity is here to prove to us that there's no one way of living or existing in this world. There's no one way of thinking. There's no one way of behaving or existing in general. So neurodiversity and this different variations in the human brains, it's a reality, and it's a fact here, and it's a proof to us that there's not only one neurotype, not only one way of brain wiring, but there are different ways of brain wirings. And this is why the term it represents everybody, all the humanity, all the human brains, neurotypicals and neurodivergence. And this is why the term is used as an advocacy term as well, because the whole point of the neurodiversity was to make a society a whole, like everyone, including all neurotypes, not only one neurotype, which is obviously the neurotypical neurotype. And it's also a property of human population on Earth. And the one thing, if we want to understand neurodiversity better, we can look at it as a subset of biodiversity, because actually the term was created as a subset of biodiversity. Biodiversity was there, of course, years before the neurodiversity. But if we want to understand better neurodiversity, we can relate it to the biodiversity, you know, because in the biodiversity,
هلا اجا
اوكي
in the neurodiversity, in the biodiversity,
صوتي
وفيرك
ask to mute, okay. In the biodiversity, it was there like in 1980s, and why it was there? Biodiversity was there to argue the conversation. I think it's written. Sorry, there's a typo. Actually, to argue the conversation of species on the Earth and on the planet. So biodiversity is really important for the conservation of the species and our planet. And it refers to the diversity of these species that inhabit our planet, plants, animals. It's a feature of our Earth and ecosystems. And the neurodiversity is built on this idea. It's built on exactly the same idea of the biodiversity. Because just as biodiversity is important and necessary for a sustainable and flourishing planet and Earth and ecosystem, also neurodiversity and respecting this different cognitive variations or brain variations is necessary for a sustainable and flourishing human society. So we have a human society, and we need a flourishing human society, and we need also a flourishing planet. So they are both connected, neurodiversity and biodiversity. And to understand it more, I always give this example. Like when we want to think of neurodiversity, let's think of a biodiversity. Like there's no wrong fish, or there's no wrong tree. There's no wrong animal, or, you know, there's no wrong or right flower. There's no wrong or right animals, or there's no wrong or right fish in the sea, or a whale, or anything. Same as brains. There's no wrong or right brains. There are just different neurotypes in our human society. And these differences should be respected and accepted, appreciated, and not treated as diseased brains or some you know, illness to be cured or treated, but rather a state of nature to be respected, because this is what it is. Neurodivergent brains are a state of nature to be respected. Now, many of us will say, like, why do we need neurodiversity in our life? Like, why do we need neurodiversity? why do we already have a lot of advocates out there? There's a lot of people talking about autism. There's a lot of people advocating for ADHD. There's a lot of inclusion advocates, right, in the society, and especially in here in UAE. Like, why do we need neurodiversity advocacy? Why do we need this awareness in particular? Because according to the World Health Organization, like 15 to 20% of the whole world population are neurodivergent. So like if you are in a room, like there's a chance 15% of the people in the room full of people, they might be neurodivergent. And this is a big number. 15 to 20% is really a big number, especially that these are the cases that are diagnosed and reported. We all know that there are many self-identified autistics or self-identified people who has ADHD. So these people are definitely not considered in the records or not recorded. Hence, the 15 and 20% might be more. And I'm sure within the next few years, because there's much more awareness and much more neurodiversity awareness, these figures will change, and it will be definitely on a rise. Neurodiversity, why do we need the awareness? Why do we need it in the education sector? Because it's totally different than the special education, which is currently operating in the schools and the universities. When we talk about special education now, it's totally different than what neurodiversity represents. So the whole education or the whole special education now, it mainly focuses on the challenges and the weaknesses. And what we need now, we need to move from the deficit-based model and from what's wrong to what's strong. We need to move forward from what's wrong with my child to what's strong in him. We need the teachers to start asking this question: what's strong in this student? Rather than saying what's strong in this student, because he's autistic, we should focus more maybe on his challenges or on his weaknesses. Most of the IEPs right now, most of the IEPs in all the special education departments or the inclusion departments, they really do focus on the challenges, on how to deal with the challenges. And only very few of them, and a very small percentage of the IEPs, do focus on the talents, on the special interests, on the strengths and the unique abilities of the kids. Shisha definitely in her talk and in her part will be explaining more about this part. Will be definitely highlighting the importance of the neurodiversity, and she will definitely unravel as well the weakness of the existing education, SEN education. Neurodiversity also is needed in business. And there's a strong now, So neurodiversity is also very much needed in the business, because we need to start including neurodiversity as a part of the DEI, the diversity and equity and inclusion. Most of the employers right now, they focus on that: diversity, inclusion, and equity. However, neurodivergents are still left behind. We will talk again, we will talk about this in the next slides. Why do we need neurodiversity in the workplaces as well? However, I want also to highlight why do we need neurodiversity or neuroaffirmative approaches or practices? Why do we need more therapists well-versed with neurodiversity, or they are practicing neuroaffirmative approaches? And what does it mean in neurodiversity affirming practice, in neurodiversity affirming approach? Mostly all the specialists, all the doctors or professionals are considered to be practicing a neuroaffirmative approach or practice is when they follow, when they respect the child's autonomy or the adult. We always talk about children because, mainly in UAE, neurodivergents are mostly children, because those are the ones that are diagnosed, or those are the ones that are, due to the social stigma, exposed. However, that we always, when we talk about therapies, we should be considering adults as well, because there are neurodivergent children and neurodivergent adults, autistic child and an autistic adult. So when a professional, whether a therapist or an educator or a doctor, respects the person's autonomy when they say no, this is really important. And when they also do not follow the neuronormative benchmarks and milestones. What do we mean by neuronormative benchmarks? Are like the neurotypical based milestones. Most of the specialists right now, or the educators or the STEM teachers, most of them do focus on these neurotypical benchmarks. They want the child, or they push the child, they want to change the child, or not to change him, they want him to follow these milestones. And when a professional is practicing a neurodiversity affirming approach, he should not follow these milestones. He should just, it should be based, or it should be an individualized approach with the child, based on his unique abilities, based on his strengths and weaknesses. And we should not force him to follow these neuronormative approaches or milestones. The person or the therapist should be focusing more on reducing the stress rather than adding the stress on the child by following these milestones. He should be honoring various forms of communication. We all know that there is non-speaking autistics or neurodivergents in general, and there are speaking neurodivergents. So the therapist also should be honoring all forms of and all ways of communication. And he should start, and of course, he should start using with the child all forms of communication and respect that. They should not be forcing the eye contact on many children. Yes, there are still many therapists that are still focusing on this milestone, which is, again, it's a neurotypical based milestone, because we as neurotypicals focus in our body language on the eye contact. However, neurotypical brains function this way. Neurodivergent brains cannot do eye contact. It's painful for them, and it triggers their anxiety. And this will definitely add to more social anxiety, less attention, and less focus. So when these therapists focus on the eye contact to, and their goal is to achieve more focus and attention, in a way, they are adding more stress, triggering the child or the adult anxiety, and reinforcing the social anxiety. And the person will have less. I think the person will not be listening properly to the other person, and he will be having and experiencing sometimes selective mutism in most cases, because anxiety, we all know, can trigger situational or selective mutism. So eye contact is really painful. We need to acknowledge this. Many professionals still do not acknowledge that eye contact is really painful, and it's unnecessary, because most of the neurodivergents can listen and focus, and they hear every single word you're saying without even having an eye contact with you. So upholding these neurotypical benchmarks and upholding these neuronormative milestones is it's only triggering anxiety, and it's not helping the child or the adult. The only way to do it is with an individualized plan, and a plan that can focus more on his strengths, special interests, and of course his weaknesses as well. They recognize professionals should, the good neuroaffirmative practice should be also recognizing sensory needs. We should be recognizing and accommodating the sensory needs of the child or the adult who is in the room, whether the light is, whether he needs dim lights, whether we need to check his sensory profile. What's the sensory profile of the child? What's his sensory? What are his hyposensitivities or hypersensitivities? A sensory profile is definitely needed. And to be honest with you, most of the teachers in the education or in the SEM departments, they don't even ask for the sensory profiles of the children while having sessions with them, whether educators or sometimes whether therapists or doctors or professionals. So sensory profiles, or getting to know more about the sensory profile of the child or the adult, is really needed to accommodate his sensory needs as well. From dim lights, from alternative seating, sensory fidgets, whatever we can do to make him more comfortable during the session. Also, the professionals who are neurodiversity affirming, they do focus as well on a collaborative work and the teamwork, because we all know that to achieve the goals or to help the child and support better
لا الصوت يا الصوت انقطع. انتبهي.
Everyone can hear me now? Is it okay?
Okay now.
So we should be focusing also on the teamwork and the collaborative teamwork. We should have everyone on board, like in the IEP, in the IEPs, in any new approach we want, like whether we want to try a new approach or a new anything new with our child. It's really good to have different opinions and different perspectives from different specializations. Like we can have each therapist on board, we can have the OT, we can have the psychologist, psychotherapist, everyone on board who is dealing with my child. And the most importantly is that all these therapists should be using a strength-based approach rather than a deficit-based approach. And they should be involving the parents. They should be involving the parents in every single step. Neurodiversity in education. Why do we need neurodiversity in education? Because, as I said before, like the whole current operating system, it has deficits and it has pros and cons, but mainly cons. Obviously, there's a recent now study made by the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network. And this study, which is made by the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, it was like done based on lots of inputs from neurodivergent families, from neurodivergents, their families, and also from the schools from all around the world, from different countries. And as per this report, and you can check it out on their network, on their website, which is www.asn.org. I will share the details later on the chat. You can check this report. So in this report, they have asked many students, neurodivergent students in schools, not only autistics, different neurodivergent students that have ADHD, dyslexia, different neurological differences and variations. And the result is that there is 29% of these students are unhappy in the current, in their schools, in the mainstream schools. So 29% is really a big number. It's an alarming number. 29% of these students are uncomfortable, they're not happy, and they really want to change the whole education. They need a change. And so this is why we need reforms. We need more reforms in the education system. And neurodiversity helps and reinforces and can stimulate real reforms in the schools. Because when we talk about reforms, the first and foremost should be mindsets, changing mindsets, having new perspective about differences, about autism, having a new perspective about all the conditions. So It can help stimulate a lot of reforms in the schools and universities. And it's a growth paradigm to replace the deficit paradigm. As I said, that currently we are mainly focusing on the deficits and the challenges and what's wrong with our children. With neurodiversity paradigm, it will definitely focus on the strength, because it's a whole strength-based model. It respects the differences, the different learning profiles of the students. We all know that our children have different learning profiles, and it's a spiky profile. Like most of the curriculums now in all the schools are not made to cater to the unique abilities of our children or the unique strengths of our kids. So we need a new model that respects the different learning profiles, these spiky profiles. Because also every student deserves a classroom and an environment in a school or in a university or a nursery that supports their strengths and help them learn to learn and gives them vital skills to prepare them for the world after school. Because it's not enough also to prepare our kids for school, because the school should be preparing our kids for life, for the work later on, and for the society, for the broader community. So this topic, honestly, the benefits of neurodiversity in education, it's a very big topic. And today we're just gonna discuss it in brief, because it's a whole new topic. We will definitely need another whole session about it. But today it's more about the introduction of neurodiversity and its benefits, and why do we need it in education and in workplaces. Hopefully we can do another session and go in depth about the neurodiversity in education and why do we need it in education and how it can help our students. Now about workplaces, neurodiversity in business. So as I said earlier, you know, most of the businesses and most of the employers right now are interested in EDI or DEI, whatever we call it. It's equality, diversity, and inclusion, which is a key to most which is now, you know, a key focus of all the organizations right now. They're taking many steps to hire people from different cultures, more females in the group, people from different backgrounds. So, you know, this is intersectionality, feminism, racism, ageism. They're also hiring people from different age groups. They're hiring people, you know, with different genders. So this is intersectionality, by the way. And this is also neurodiversity also is a part of this intersectionality. Because when we talk ageism, racism, all these isms, there's also a brain, the neurotypes or the brain wiring is also a part of this. It's a part of this, and this is why the movement is there. So neurodivergence and the whole, this whole key focus, they are still left out and they are still overlooked, because people are focusing more on diversity rather than neurodiversity. And diversity is totally different than neurodiversity. When we say diversity, it means genders, diversity in genders, diversity in cultures. It means people from different countries. But however, the neurodivergent are still overlooked. So this is why we need neurodiversity as a part of the EDI. Maybe we can call it later on EDIN. Equality, diversity, inclusion, and neurodiversity. Neurodiversity should be part of that. And this is the fight that Judy Singer started, that neurodiversity is a part of the intersectionality. And we need it on board. We need it as a part of the EDI, or an additional, you know, on the top of the EDI, equality, diversity, inclusion, and neurodiversity as well. So adults with the neurological differences are still left out. They are jobless. As per the rates, as per the autism and unemployment rates in USA, as per the US unemployment rates, there's around like 85% of adults, autistic adults, that are unemployed. And these are all, they do have college education, they're qualified. They are qualified autistic adults with college degrees. And they're still unemployed. 85% is another alarming figure. So in the education, we saw there's a 29% of the students in the report of ASN are showing signs of distress in schools and in the universities, and they are not happy with the current educational system and model. And now in employment or in the workspaces, we can see that 85% of the autistics and neurodivergents are unemployed. And this is, honestly, as a mother of a neurodivergent child, this is a very alarming figure. And this is why we need to start doing something about it. We need to start something. And I know that, we all know that the change is hard. So we need to start now so that we can, we need to start, sowing the seeds now so that we can see results in the years, in few years ahead. Because when we're doing now this, and when we're spreading awareness and doing all this advocacy, we're just doing it. At the end of the day, we're doing it for our children. We're doing it for the next generation. We're not doing it for the old generation. We're doing it for the next generation. So it's time now to start this change. It's time now to start, sowing the seeds. And, later on, when we will see the whole tree, because this seed now we are sowing, it might just turn out later into a big tree that can protect many of us, many neurotypes as well, not only neurodivergence. Why we need neurodiversity in work? Why, as an employer, I need to hire autistics? Why I need to hire individuals with ADHD? Why I need to hire neurodivergence? Just give me a reason. They have many challenges. They have many challenges. They have many struggles. Why do I need to hire them? First, because you need to tackle skill shortages. Second, because neurodivergence, they have different strengths and they can bring a lot to the workplaces. First, they have a different problem solving, a unique, brain wiring. And this unique brain wiring can bring a lot of new changes to the work, a new ways of problem solving. We all know that autistics, neurodivergence in general, they are straightforward. They're black or white people. They're honest people. They're loyal. They're creative. They're innovative. They think out of the box, and they are professional and hard workers. They can hyper focus. We all know that neurodivergence, one of their characteristics or traits is hyper focusing, and this can definitely be an asset to the employer. So this is another big topic, and it's also like it would take another presentation to explain why it's important and why do we need neurodiversity in business. But today we're just again talking about the main bullets. Why do we need it? But it will be also we will definitely be doing another session about this, about neurodiversity in business or in workplaces. And as I mentioned earlier, that we have started now, and we are volunteers now and activists in an organization which is called Neurodiversity in Business. So this organization, which is the headquarters are in UK, and it's expanding. And now most of the big companies are joining. And for now, there's almost 600 companies, international companies, that have joined the Neurodiversity in Business. And these are, like, we're talking about big names, Google, LinkedIn, Rolls-Royce, PwC, Ernst & Young, big names and big companies. So this is good news. This is good news that many companies and many big names have started and have realized the importance of neurodiversity and the benefits of neurodivergence in the workplace. They have realized that they can bring a lot of creativity, innovation, and professionalism to the workspaces. Besides their struggles, there's a lot of strengths and unique talents that we need to tackle. When I started the presentation, or when I started talking about neurodiversity, I have mentioned that, especially here in this part of the world, because the term is relatively very new, you know, maybe in other countries they have started talking about neurodiversity earlier, but in this part of the world, yes, it's relatively very new. And this is why there's a lot of linguistic confusion, and there's a lot of misconception about it. So neurodiversity, there's a lot of misconception, or there's a myth that neurodiversity is not only for individuals, it's only for individuals who have less impairments, or maybe who are less autistic, or less or have less disabilities, or less support needs. But this is not true. Neurodiversity, as I've mentioned, it's for everybody. Anyway, the whole term represents us all. It represents me, you, it represents my daughter, autistic daughter, it represents my ADHD cousin, my cousin who has ADHD. It represents us all. So it's brains, all brains on earth. So it's for everyone. It's not only for a specific category of neurodivergence who have less support needs, or who are speaking neurodivergence or verbal neurodivergence. It's for everyone. It's for non-speaking neurodivergence or autistics, and for speaking autistics. It's for everybody. And most of the self-advocates that are now talking about neurodiversity and advocating for the cause, there are many of them who are non-speaking and who are non-verbal, non-speaking or non-verbal, because they are both different things. So another misconception is that, you know, when we talk about neurodiversity model, which is obviously a social model, not a medical model, we are denying the disability aspect in autism or in other conditions, which is, again, it's also a misconception, because when we talk neurodiversity, we are not denying the disability aspect. Many autistic adults or children, they do have co-occurring conditions. They do have co-occurring disabilities. They do have disabilities and impairments. And this is, neurodiversity is not by any chance denying this disability. However, the model does not consider autism itself, or ADHD, or dyslexia, or any type of neurodivergence is a source of shame, or it's an illness, or a sickness to be cured. So it recognizes these conditions, or neurological conditions, as different neurotypes, different brain wiring, to be respected. So disabled people are not broken or incomplete versions of neurotypicals. And neurodiversity advocates for that disabled people are not, you know, a broken version of neurotypicals. They're just different neurotype, and they are different. And yes, they might have a disability, but that doesn't make them any less, or any, you know, any less. And they do still have the right to access everything in society, whether education, workspaces, everything. So they should have equal access to society, just like neurotypicals. Not pathologizing autism also does not mean that autistics or neurodivergence in general, they don't have impairments, which is actually the same point as the one we've mentioned earlier. Because see, the neurodiversity being a social model, it's different than the medical model. And it emphasizes that the person, we should not focus on fixing the person, the neurodivergent person. We should rather focus on fixing the society and the social barriers and the environmental barriers that are disabling and that are making the neurodivergent person or individual suffer. While the medical model focuses more on fixing the individuals, fixing the neurodivergence to be a version of neurotypicals, or a better version of neurodivergence, so that they can be more close to neurotypicality. So again, the medical model upholds neurotypicality as the benchmark of success. Neurodivergence should be fixed, while the social model focuses on the society and the social barriers, not the individual himself. We don't want to change neurodivergence. We don't want to undo autism or ADHD or any type of neurological or cognitive difference. We just want to fix the environment and the social barriers so that these individuals can reach their full potential. We need to focus on their strengths, to celebrate their strengths, and try to support them in their challenges and weaknesses and struggles. And also, the model does not deny that there are co-occurring conditions with neurodivergence, and with autism, ADHD, with any neurological difference. Yes, there are many co-occurring conditions. These co-occurring conditions are medical sometimes, and they need to be treated. So there is definitely no denial of support or medical support. The whole model is not there to deny the medical model. It's just here to strike the balance. We want to strike a balance between the existing medical model, and we want another social model to strike the balance so that the person or the neurodivergence can reach their full potential. Neurodiversity, and this is a very important point, because many people would, and there's many like negative talks around neurodiversity and the whole movement, saying that it's somehow dividing autistics, particularly autistics, that it's dividing the autistics as a community, or the autistic community, or it's dividing the whole human society. It's dividing neurodivergence versus neurotypicals, or us versus them. I'm in a meaning that I am a neurotypical versus another neurodivergence. But this is not true. Again, neurodiversity, it's a representation of all human brains, and it does not represent only one neurotype, which is neurodivergent brains. It also represents neurotypical brains. So the whole concept was not there to divide the human society, but rather to promote a healthier human society that celebrates all kinds of minds, and that this is the only way, to be honest, for a nourishing human society, just same as biodiversity. We need all species, we need everything on Earth, on this planet, and we need to conserve it. And this is the same with the human society. We need all brains. We need them, whether in workplace, in education, in society, and at every level of society. So the model is not here to separate us from them, or to separate the autistics from, between them, between this, high support needs or low support needs. It's here to unite everyone, not to separate or to divide anyone. When we talk about neurodiversity, we talk a lot about, or when we hear the word neurodiversity, most often it's associated with ableism, or with the word ableism, and many people still are confused. What is ableism? What do we really mean by ableism? Ableism is the discrimination against able-bodied people, or people with disabilities, or with people with neurological differences. So it's a discrimination again for neurodivergent people. And it can take many forms. Like, there's many forms of ableism, and it can take forms of assumptions, wrong assumptions, old preconceived notions, stereotypes, language. Sometimes our language is ableist. Some practices and attitudes, like, for example, the whole idea that we need to fix the person, or we need to cure the person so that he can be more neurotypical. This is ableism. When we try to uphold neuronormative or neurotypical milestones, this is another form of ableism. When we try to infantilize people who are disabled, or people who are neurologically different, and this is, by the way, this is very common here in our society. When we talk about a neurodivergent adult or a child, we try to infantilize him. For example, my daughter is 10 years or 9 years old. Her teacher would try to talk to her as if she's 4 years old. Why? Because she's simply autistic. This is infantilization, and this is ableism. Just because she is autistic, or just because her brain is wired differently, that doesn't mean she needs to be treated as a child or an infant. And this is applicable for adults as well. And honestly, I have came to this realization with my own dad. Recently, my dad has now a new disability, and he had a brain stroke. And unfortunately, he cannot talk properly right now because, due to the brain stroke, so his speech was impaired. And he's been doing speech sessions and everything, but he's not here. He's in my home country. But I have realized that the way our friends, family members, relatives, professionals, doctors are talking with him is totally different. The way they talk to him, it's not the same. It's like they're also trying to infantilize him or trying to talk to him as if he's much younger or as if he's a child while he's in his 70s. So this infantilization, it's something that sometimes we do it unconsciously. And I honestly, I'm guilty for that. I sometimes do it. I practice it sometimes with my own father or daughter. So I think everyone, somehow, everybody unconsciously do this infantilization. As I said before also, we should always presume competence. So not presuming competence. By the way, infantilization is the same. We are not presuming competence. Just because the person in front of us is disabled, or he has an impairment, or he is neurologically different, we assume that he cannot do this, or he cannot do that, or maybe he cannot, I don't think he can, answer this question, or I don't think he should be at this party because he is disabled. So we need always to presume competence, and, presuming competence is somehow, focusing on what our children or what on adults can do rather than on what they cannot do. There's a lot of ableist language, as I said, and why do we need to use the right language when we talk to neurodivergents or disabled people in general? Why do we need the right language? Okay, first and foremost, because language is important. Language shapes our world, and it empowers them. It empowers neurodivergents to advocate for themselves. And also, when we use the right language, an empowering and a kind language, an empathetic, compassionate language, we are also challenging stereotypes. We are challenging the social stigma. Because when we use ableist language, or when we use negative language, when talking about people with neurological differences, then we are reinforcing the stereotypes, and we are reinforcing again the misconception. The Autistic Advocacy Network, or the autistic community, they have been advocating for that for a while now. And most of the autism research that's available right now, unfortunately, is using ableist language when it comes to autistic people. And they have been advocating that they need more researchers that are accessible, that are less ableist, that are inclusive of the autistic participation and their perspective. It's not only when we do a research about autistics that we take data about autistics, or we gather data around autistics. We also need to gather their perspectives and to hear their own version or their own perspective about a certain topic. So we also need to advocate for research that's reflective of the priorities of the autistics or neurodivergence in general, that's written in such a way or that is inclusive as well. And language used is a compassionate language rather than an ableist language. In many researches right now, or studies, we read a lot of words like this is normal, or when, for example, as per the normal people, we use a lot of terms that are a little bit hurtful, or actually very hurtful or harmful to the autistic community or the neurodivergent community in general. So this language is stigmatizing, actually. And we need to start moving away from this stigmatizing language to a more compassionate and anti-ableist language. And for example, we hear a lot of words like awkward, crazy, autism signs and symptoms. Autism is not an illness or a disease to have a signs and symptoms. High functioning, you don't look autistic, you look normal, everyone is a little autistic. You know, these are, you know, we need to start, if we want to be a neurodiversity affirming people, or if we want to be more an inclusive society, we should start familiarizing ourselves with the terms and language that promotes, that actually fights ableism and fights stigma. So we're not asking this mainly from the general public, because general public or people, they don't know. Sometimes they are, they just say words out, you know, from a place of love. They don't know that this word might be hurtful to others. But parents like us, we are parents, and we are also advocating for our children, specialists, professionals, doctors, people who are sharing information. These people at least should familiarize themselves with the right language, with the language that's more anti-ableist, and that it can more reinforce an inclusive, you know, inclusive terms rather than ableist terms. I'm just here listing a few comparisons between the ableist language and the anti-ableist language that we can use. You know, we can start learning or trying to educate ourselves about the anti-ableist language, like replacing terms. Rather than saying autism spectrum disorder, we can say autism condition or autism. Rather than saying mentally retarded, we can say it's a cognitive disability. Rather than saying normal or abnormal, this person his brain is normal, or this person, his brain is abnormal. We can use the words neurotypical and neurodivergent. When we say you look normal, this is insulting, and it's definitely offensive for a person who is neurodivergent. So rather than saying you look normal, we can say, I understand your struggles. We can ask more questions to understand better the person and his difference or his diagnosis. Rather than saying psycho or not or crazy, we can say different. So there's many terms we can replace to start using a more kind and compassionate language, and most importantly, anti-ableist. So what is the power of neurodiversity? So we're talking a lot about neurodiversity, and the benefits of neurodiversity in education, in workplace, in the society. There's neurodiversity, actually, it has a lot of power, and it might take years and years for the people to recognize this power. But today, I just want to list here a few important things that neurodiversity is highlighting, or it's bringing to the society. As it's a new paradigm shift, obviously, and the first and foremost, this new paradigm has unraveled the existing deficit model that we have. It has unraveled the existing deficit model that we have in education. It has unraveled the existing deficit model we have as a society. It has unraveled the existing deficit model we have in work, when we focus more on hiring neurotypical people rather than neurodivergent. So changing cultural perception of what does it mean to be human. Neurodiversity gives us a new perspective, not only about differences or disability. It gives us a new perspective about humanity in general. And it's a whole change in our cultural perception. It's an advocacy term, and it's a human rights term as well. And it raises consciousness, and it combats oppression. When we say ableism, that means another form of oppression. So we are fighting through the neurodiversity movement. We are fighting social stigma. We are fighting social oppression, all kinds of oppression. We're fighting ableism. We are advocating for equal access to education and work for everyone, for all the neurotypes. Neurodiversity is also a very strong analytical tool for examining social issues. And it is a state of nature to be respected. Because as I've said, the whole term was created to be a subset of biodiversity. When the whole biodiversity thing or the term was created in 1980, it was also very quite new and nobody understood it. And they thought it was just a term and, you know, they didn't give it that much importance. But however, after years, they recognized the importance of biodiversity. And just now, the same thing with neurodiversity. It was created in 1990, and just now people are recognizing the importance of neurodiversity in 2020 and in 2021, 2, 3, because only a few years now that the whole movement is gaining this momentum. And thank you for this part. And you know, I hope that I covered, you know, the main. I hope this introduction was insightful for everyone. And now my colleague Shija will be highlighting more. We'll be talking about the twice exceptionality, and she will be also discussing a lot of topics regarding education. So I will stop sharing now, Shija, so you can share your own slides as well.
Thank you, Karen. It was really beneficial. It really changed the concept of me dealing with my son, because I usually use words that are يعني, lower than his age. I was talking to him like he's 10, so I'm treating him like a 5 years old. And you just let me concentrate on that, and I'll change the way that I behave with him. Thank you.
Thank you, Hayat. And honestly, I am guilty for that as well. I was just saying, like, even with the way I realized recently that the way I'm talking with my own dad is different than the way I used to talk to him. And sometimes I fall for this mistake with my own daughter, but I always keep reminding myself that this is infantilization. I need to avoid that. I need to speak to her like she is 9 years old, not less. So we just, I think, need to keep reminding ourselves. It's never easy. The change is never easy, but it's just that we need to keep going and to keep reminding ourselves.
Thank you. كان صراحة أبدعتي ما شاء الله عليك. يعني ما شاء الله English الدورة إن شاء الله الكل يعني يكون يستفاد منها. بس في عندك سؤالين في الشات إذا تحبي تردي عليهم.
Yes, I will just.
Yeah, please.
I will just go through the chat right now. So how do I know the sensory profile of my child? Basically, your occupational therapist should definitely have done this, you know, the sensory profile. And there's usually a sensory profile questionnaire that the parents fill and the OT try to assess. Usually the occupational therapists should have the sensory profile and you should have done an assessment. I'm not sure if you work right now with an occupational therapist, but if you don't, then an occupational therapist is the person who can identify the sensory needs of your child, his hypersensitivities, if he's hypersensitive to a particular thing or he is hypersensitive, and she will give you the whole sensory profile of your child. So you have to check with the occupational therapist, the OT. She is the one who can provide you with all the information about this. And based on that, you can definitely create together a plan. How do we create sensory profile for the neurodivergent? Laura, it's again with the OT. This is a thing that can be done with the OT, of course, in collaboration. It's all a collaborative teamwork, and the OT with the parent as well. And if you are working with maybe a speech therapist, she can have her own inputs as well. But mainly, it's with the occupational therapist because she's more familiar with the sensory. She has to do the assessment first, and she has to, she has to do the assessment herself as well. Of course, by asking the parents, because you have to fill, in my case, I had to fill a lot of questions related to the sensory profiles. And, based on these questions, she started her observation as well, and she did her own assessment. And this is how we created a sensory profile for Stacy. If there's any questions, you can always, share here in the chat. So, and, Shija will now start, and maybe later on the last 5 to 10 minutes, we can try to answer all of the questions.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
As usual, you keep advocating
How
for
are you, Sajan?
neurodiversity.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Nice
Hi,
to meet you
Dr. Feda. How
again.
are you?
Mashallah.
Good,
We
good.
wait for you. You long time, huh? You can share your.
I'll quickly go.
Yeah. You want to co-host? Okay.
Can
Yes,
you see my screen?
slides.
Yeah?
Yes, we do. Yes, we can see you.
Yeah? Great.
Yes.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Shija. I'm here to talk to you a little bit, an introduction to twice exceptionality. Now, I'll just start with what we usually see as education methods. Special education is something everybody knows. We look at the difference of the child, the needs of the child, and then we kind of work on those. Gifted education is not something that's very commonly seen in this part of the world. It is usually when they are identified with certain gifts or talents, especially through an EdPsych evaluation, that they are categorized as gifted kids. Inclusive education is also something very commonly known, that everybody can be within the classroom and have access to all kinds of education. The last one again is something that is coming up, accessible education. So where the teachers or the teaching department actually comes together, design courses that suits the needs of all the kids in the classroom based on their learning styles or maybe different backgrounds, anything. And what do we traditionally see around schools? We see challenges getting identified, you're referred for an assessment. Giftedness identification is quite rare again, but you might see it after an EdPsych test, or it's usually after when they get recommended by the SEN department. And often we see that the behavior is being seen as a deficit in the child, and let's fix the behavior before we support the child academically. So a child can be gifted and the child could have a disability or a neurological difference. They can be at both ends. It's not just that it's only special needs or only, gifted education. A child can be at both ends of the spectrum. Now, existing curriculums that we have that is commonly seen, they all are each found great curriculum or content found and very test oriented. So think about a child, development is never in a straight line. There's always an asynchronous development that happens. But when you're bound to a system, it's very hard to cater to the needs of each of those asynchronicity. Some even call them as spikes and drops or however you want to call it. But in the classroom, when you're very bound to the grade content, it is very hard to go beyond, extend them or stay below them. Now, IEP and support plans, they often ensure that the child can fit into that grade-bound curriculum within the classroom. And most often it focuses on the challenges than the unique ability of the child. Now, what does that mean? Like, what does an ideal support for 2E mean? 2E is another word for twice exceptionality. It's to have a strength-based support. Now, what do you mean by a strength-based support? Like, where do you start to kind of ensure a strength-based support? Usually it is by identifying the areas of strengths or interest. Now, these strengths or interests doesn't mean that you have to be a pro or a professional in that kind of strength or interest in the case of the child. It could be any interest. It could be as simple as music itself. Now, understanding their learning style. Do they learn best when they are one-on-one? Or is it in a dyad setting? Or is it in a group setting? What is the mode of expression for each of these children? It need not be focusing on just verbal speech. It could be any form of communication. incorporating all these kind of interests within the learning by the teachers or the tutors or therapists. Now, even giving the students the freedom to kind of come up with their own way of expressing their information. It could be a visual storytelling, it could be with images, it could be creating a presentation, it could be anything. So that flexibility, rather than saying that this is what everybody does, let's write an essay, and not everybody can do it. Okay, now I'll take a pause here. When I met Dr. Fida at the ICANN this time, what she asked me was, why are you doing this homeschooling? There's so many schools out here in Dubai. Both my children have got very unique profiles. Now, when schools were making all these IEPs, they all want my children to fit into those classrooms. I have reached out to around 14 schools, but I couldn't see anywhere where the strengths are equally catered to. I chose a mix of online schooling, live schooling, tutors and therapists. My daughter found a school. I found her a school that she's thriving well there, and it's a 2E school. My son needs more customization. It's very difficult to find a school for him. Now, because of which, and because of what, there's a concept of alternative schooling in other countries. We do not have that in the UAE. UAE has only curriculum-based schools out here. I now work with around 20 people in different countries to ensure that they have the best support. And this is not possible with a single school in the UAE. Now, my idea of homeschooling, again, is not the conventional pattern of going through every subject. My idea is a child should be able to have an input, should be able to read, should be able to have an output, either through typing, expressing in a way, or any method that the child is comfortable in. And math. These are the basic academic subjects that is required. And that will help in learning any subject later on in life. So these are the basic ones. And think of this way, that when you enter a school, they all have their minimum required skill set that is there for each of these subjects. However, our kids have many developmental delays that they cannot meet up to them. But for the sake of the classroom, we all kind of fit into that kind of a system. But at the same time, they're working so hard in ensuring to that kind of a skill set. So what I focused was, let me work on those basic skill set instead of targeting a curriculum. And I also work as having mentors or tutors to discuss on interest topics. I do not force socializations for them. I use kind of mixed age group, common interest socializing opportunities. There are multi options for those, but mostly virtual. I do not get an in-person option for that yet. I also kind of give a well-balanced day where they can take enough breaks, where they can sit for their interest as long as they want to. It helps them to get more regulated rather than confining them to be in a school from 8 to 3 or a set number of hours. So that's my idea of homeschooling. So I don't do the conventional homeschooling for both my kids. I have just listed few of how, how I kind of individualize their strength-based approaches. This is something that I am doing for my son. And remember, these are all work in progress. It's not something that I have reached this level, or it's still, I keep working, I keep tweaking the goals so that I can incorporate more. As age progresses, there are different roles that every child requires, and we have to keep tweaking on those. So when I saw that he's got excellent reading ability, vocal expression, but he couldn't show those facial expressions the same way he had the vocal expressions. And so the nonverbal gestures, which is actual communication, many kids are not able to use that. And if you look at the general people, the more actions and more movements our face has, the expression makes a big difference. It's not that I try to force him with all these expressions, but to help him understand how that helps communicate to the audience. And that's how I use drama sessions for those. He loves astronomy and anything to do with space, but he cannot have a conversation with it. He will give a speech on it, but he will not have a conversation on it. For which I brought in mentors in place where he can watch videos with them and he gets an opportunity to talk. I have specifically mentioned we are not teaching anybody, but there is a conversation happening. So that, because it's of an interest of, because of his interest, it helps boosting that conversation. I took music and rhythm. He has bilateral coordination difficulties. He's dyspraxic, and playing drums, ukulele, keyboard, all these kind of helps in those. If he was in a school, I won't be able to do all these activities together. He likes to learn math, but however, he is not able to write the steps by himself. So I sit with him and I write for him, and he's very happy when I write it. So this is all approaches that we use based on his level. And we are not depriving him because he's not having the skill set for it. We are finding strategies on how we can take it further. Now, for my daughter, it's a different approach. So both of them have got, I mentioned earlier, they're very unique in their profiles. They do not match here and there. Now, she always wants to be a part of school, but she doesn't want to attend a whole day. And moving from class to class for each of these courses during middle school was so hard for her. So she attends an online 2E school where they have only 4.5 hours of live schooling. Now, should I mute? Am I good? Yeah, okay. So now she's very currently passionate about doing subject-based assignments, presentations, and all that. But she cannot do a test. So the school that she is in has no test, but their assessment happens through grades and projects that they do. Now she likes to spend time on her interest. She really wants to delve deep into it. But the schools that she had been earlier had limitations. They always would like her to go deep into a project, but again, she has to fit into the box. And here they have a year-long assignment opportunity where they can really work on their interest topic with a mentor of their choice, and the school advisor will help them in their executive functioning as well. So this is a very different profile for my daughter. My son's was a different idea. So in short, what I'm trying to say is that meet where the child is at. Whatever strengths and passions they have, please encourage them. And please diversify those interests also. If it's art, let's explore different kinds of art. The child will always keep changing their interest, the intensity of interest as well. We as parents have to keep tweaking them and kind of incorporate those into their sessions as much as possible. Schools will often follow a deficit-based model, and they will not look at why the behavior is. And there's always a study this way that even cognitive activities have to be addressed despite their challenges that they have. We have to address both at the same time. So always advocate for a support system that encourages both. Please ask schools to include these kind of strength-based approaches into their IEPs so that it is the whole child perspective that you get there. And these are some of the 2E resources that I've put across, the first 2 books and the links that they are. And that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Peda. Thank you, Karen, for this opportunity.
Maybe we can put some of the resources or important links in the chat as well, like, you know.
Sure, we can. And
for more reading about the topic.
Yeah, and one last thing, a big thanks to my daughter. She did all the slides for me.
So nothing about them without them.
Yeah. Do you want me to put all these into the chat?
Maybe, you know, most of, or the ones that are.
Give her a big clap, everybody. Give her daughter a big clap for assisting her mom. I feel that they are the ones who are taking care of their brothers and sisters like we do.
Yes.
Oh.
Let me stop share here and then I shall put it in the chat. Yeah, there you go.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead.
The resistance that you faced, especially from the people around you, for them being different, how did you overcome that? Thank you.
I look at the strength of the child really. I am the odd one out with the people around me. And I'm fine doing that because I saw my children are happy with the approaches that I chose for them. And they seem to be really progressing with the way I chose for them. If I had listened to the people around me, I wouldn't see those light in their eyes.
Thank you.
Shija, I just want to highlight actually, because
Karen,
yes,
Karen, you can open all the question for all people. If finish, خلاص, we can close.
yeah. Actually, the questions are open. Everyone can,
Okay.
ask any
Okay.
question. But
Okay.
I just wanted to highlight something. Today we're talking about twice exceptionality, which is a very, very, very overlooked topic as well here in UAE. And mainly not in UAE, right, Shija? I'm not, correct me because you are.
No. It's all across the world because
all
people
across
do
the world.
not
This
know
topic-
that
Yes.
the child can be at both ends. What happens is that many a times all these challenges kind of mask their gifts. So
Yes.
we just assume that the same thing, like how you need to presume competence, we just assume that the child is unable to do, maybe because the child doesn't have the language for it, maybe the child cannot speak so fast, maybe the child is not even speaking, so we do not know what their likes are. But think about it, every child has some likes on the other. The moment we start looking at the child, what is the child being occupied with at the most? What is the child really happy about doing? And that's their interest and strength.
Totally agree. Yeah. But I really hope more people will start, talking about this important, especially, specialists in the field. Like we need, like in UAE, right? I mean, you had to outsource everything from the US, right? Everything, it's from the US.
Yeah.
I hope we will reach one stage in the UAE where you don't need to do that, where you can have
Definitely.
everything here in UAE, all the resources, all the specialists, everything available in UAE, so you can support your twice exceptional children. And and the diagnosis here also is another story. Like again,
Yeah.
I really want more professionals. If any of our participants today are from they are professionals or working with neurodivergent children or maybe twice exceptional children, I'm not sure. But I mean, we need to raise this topic because it's really important to have at least the right as well. These children have the equal right to be diagnosed properly, not misdiagnosed. Because most likely many children in UAE or other parts of the world are misdiagnosed just because they are twice exceptional. As you said, their challenges might be hiding their talents, or the other way around. Their talents might be hiding their
Of course.
struggles. So there's
Yes.
always some sort of misdiagnosed somewhere, just because there's a lack of awareness about this topic and lack of experience from the specialists around the world. So I really hope this topic will there will be more, we will shed more light, and many more people, specialists and professionals, start shedding light on this topic. So at least so that the children can be diagnosed properly, and they can be supported properly as well. Because if they're misdiagnosed, they won't be able, their parents or no one will be able to support them. So yeah.
Laura, international resources, you mean as in professionals or tutors, or what is that you asked for? Jeanette? Professional tutors. There are a couple of websites called Vicens, and most of the contacts came through other parents recommending tutors, and that's how I got them. By rule of thumb, I always try for 4 to 6 sessions to see, because our children take time to kind of really get along. And most of these tutors who know how to do online sessions, they really have their own methods. We often feel that only in person works, but many of these online people really have Google Docs, or they write on the screen. In fact, my son doesn't want to type rather. So the teacher actually types on the screen so he can see the answers on the screen. So there are different methods as per the child's ability or interest that they can really work on. So finding that teacher takes time. Even if we take time, we need to at least spend 4 to 6 weeks to see if the child is engaged, is the child enjoying. My idea is always starting with 30 minutes. Even if I go for 40, 45 minutes, I'll ask for a teacher who can play with my son for at least 5 to 10 minutes, because that kind of bonding really helps to take that session further and helps my son also engage on that topic. I have sent 2 of the websites that I have reached out. Temper Tutors is something I still work with.
If there are any questions, please go ahead before we, end the session today. And thank you all for joining us.
Yeah.
So I think excellent information. Thank you. Thank you, Hayat, for joining. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us such information.
So there are a few links that are shared on the chat. So if anyone would love to, have those, check more information on these links. I have shared also the Autistic Advocacy website, so that you can check out also the latest report that implies that, there's a lot of deficits in the education system, and there's 29% of autistic students that are unhappy or uncomfortable in their education. And this is, across the world. It's not only limited to one territory. Chija also shared her resources. So Dr. Fida, would you like to say anything before we end the session?
ياس أنا صراحة حابة أنا حتكلم بالعربي وأنت تقولون بالإنجليزي.
أكيد.
صراحة أنا بشكركم كلكم، يعني صراحة اليوم قدمتوا عمل رائع جدا جدا جدا، وبالذات إنه إحنا أول مرة بالمركز بفريق الدعم إنه إحنا نقدم دورة باللغة الإنجليزية لغير الناطقين، وإحنا سعيدين. أكيد طبعا في حد ناطق بالعربي وبس بيحب إنه يفهم بالإنجليش، يعني أكيد المعلومات وصلت. الحلو في الموضوع إن إحنا معانا ضيفة عزيزة تعرفت عليها من فترة 3-4 أيام، وهي عندها طفلة من أصحاب الهمم بس من الكويت، وأنا مبسوطة كثير إنه هي موجودة معانا وسمعتك وهي سألت سؤال واستفادت. يعني إن شاء الله هاي البداية، وإن شاء الله إنه هذا الموضوع حيكون مسجل وراح نبعته لكل الناس اللي ما حضروا أيضا. شكرا لك يا كارين، شكرا لسعدي، شكرا لكل اللي شاركوا. شكرا للدكتورة حياة مشاركتها أيضا. لا، سعيدة بكل الأمهات الموجودين معنا. شكرا.
شكرا لك، وشكرا انك اعطيتينا كمان البلاتفورم لنحكي عن هالمواضيع.
بالعكس احنا هذا واجبنا. يا ريت تشرحي لهم بالانجلش.
أكيد. Dr. Fida will just want to, she was expressing her, interest in this topic, neurodiversity and twice exceptionality. And she's, this is the first time that, their center, this is the first time actually the center is doing sessions in English and particularly in these topics. So this is the first time that we have done one session earlier about neurodiversity in Arabic, but this is the first time that this topic is tackled in English, and this is the first time, obviously, as well, they discuss twice exceptionality. So she's very happy because she thinks that this is the beginning, this is the start, and definitely more awareness. There should be more awareness about these two topics mainly. And hopefully in the future, we will be doing much more sessions and we will be going in depth about these topics. And yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us today. And that's all. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being part of the conversation as well. So thank you, everyone. So
Thank you. Good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye. Bye.
Just one more information that the session will be recorded, and the session will be recorded and it will be on the platform of the Read and Enjoy Center. So you can just check their social media handles, the Facebook, the Instagram. The session will be there. It's recorded. So if in case anyone missed the session, you can just ask them to access the social media, Instagram mainly, and they can find it there. Thank you.